Coming to you from the mountains and the plain. The only conservative voices brave enough to push back. This is the Conservative Daily Podcast with Joe Otto.
That's what the Second Amendment was designed to do. If you're going to do something to nullify or take away my rights under the Constitution, come get it.
Max McGuire.
When you look at politicians on the left, they need to convince people that they are victims.
A resistance to the resistance. And now your hosts, Joe Otto and Max McGuire.
And welcome back to another edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. My name is Max McGuire. Joe Otto just got dragged into a meeting, so it looks like it's just going to be me today. He might join us a little later on, but for the moment, it's just going to be me. And we have a lot to talk about, so we're going to dive right into it. Before we even get started, hit that share button. Make sure you give us a thumbs up and like the video. Make sure you comment if you're watching on Facebook. On YouTube, make sure you give us a thumbs up. Very important. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button and then hit the bell for notifications and leave comments as well. A big, big day today. Yes, I'm seeing in the comment section, Dominion fraud is blowing up. It is. It is. And we'll talk about that a little bit today. But I want to focus on one issue that's just kind of emerged overnight, which is absolutely stunning. The idea that Philadelphia has already started destroying the envelopes that mail-in ballots arrived in. I will say that again. There are allegations now being pushed out there, and we'll show them in a second, that Philadelphia has already started destroying the envelopes that mail-in ballots arrived inside of. This is important. Because in Pennsylvania, under Pennsylvania law, in order for a mail-in ballot to count, a couple things need to happen as it relates to the envelope. One, it needs to have a signature on it. And presumably that signature would need to match the voter's signature on file. Now, different counties and courts have said you don't need to do that, but the law says you're supposed to. So that's an important part of the process of having your mail-in ballot count in Pennsylvania. The next part is that it has to have a postmark. Now, technically, you can drop your mail-in ballot off by hand, and it wouldn't have a postmark. But as it relates to late arriving mail-in ballots, it is crucial that they be able to prove that it not only arrived when it said it did, but was mailed when it said it did. And they said they have 10,000 or so late arriving mail-in ballots in, I don't know if it's Pennsylvania or Philly. Those are being challenged by the Supreme Court. And interestingly enough, the United States Supreme Court didn't just issue one order to Pennsylvania, it issued two, ordering that late arriving ballots be segregated from ballots that had been mailed and arrived on time. The reason that they had to issue two orders is because there was reason to believe that Philadelphia specifically was mingling in late arriving ballots with on-time ballots. That's important. The Supreme Court had to issue a second order to Pennsylvania specifically because there were allegations that Philadelphia was not segregating them as they were supposed to, and that late arriving ballots were being mixed in with on-time ballots. You start to understand why it's very hard to believe that every day they're just finding hundreds of thousands more ballots, right? When you start hearing allegations that late arriving ballots are being kind of shoved into the pile, that is why the Supreme Court had to come in with a second order demanding that they segregate those ballots. And then lo and behold, after that order comes down, they say, oh, well, we have much fewer late arriving ballots than we ever thought, only 10,000. Not enough to make up the results. Of course not. Because as the allegations are now alleging, I mean, that's kind of redundant, allegations alleging, a lot of those late arriving ballots were actually pushed into the counts. So that is unsubstantiated. But what we are hearing reports of is that the ballot envelopes are being destroyed. Now, that's a big deal. Because the Trump campaign is in court right now, arguing before a federal judge and saying that their poll watchers and their challengers were deliberately not only kept out of the room when these were being canvassed, but also that the ones that were able to get into the room were put so far away they couldn't possibly have seen the envelopes, couldn't have possibly verified that the envelope signatures existed, that the postmarks existed, and that secrecy sleeves were used. If any of those three things are missing, a ballot can be thrown out. Before we get into this, let's make sure that we explain something. There are two words that kind of get used interchangeably, but they are important and there's a difference. the idea of a recount and a recanvass. Those are often used interchangeably, and this Trump campaign is kind of demanding both, but they are very different. A recanvass. So canvassing happens when you, as far as mail-in ballots go, right? A canvass, when you're canvassing that ballot, you pick up the sealed envelope, you check to make sure the envelope is legitimate, that all of the check boxes have been met. You open that envelope, in Pennsylvania at least, you see that it's in a secrecy sleeve, and you say, yes, this is legitimate. You obviously then verify that the person is registered to vote, all that. You say, yes, this is a legitimate ballot. That's the canvass process. Once a ballot has been approved and saying, yes, this is a legitimate ballot, they crossed their T's, they dotted their I's, everything was followed to the T. Once that has been canvassed and proven to be legitimate, then it goes to be counted. The difference between a canvass and a count is that if the canvass is off, if there are problems in the canvass, if bad ballots, if fraudulent ballots, if illegal ballots are approved when they never should have been, then the count will be off. You can't recount ballots that are not proven to have been canvassed correctly, because if you recount bad ballots, all you then get is a duplicate count of the bad ballots. And this is the problem we're seeing with Dominion voting systems and electronic voting systems. If those voting systems, as are being alleged, if those voting systems changed results, changed tallies, changed ballots even, as we talked about a couple of days ago, when it comes to potentially changing barcodes, to the point where the human eye cannot differentiate a slight difference in a barcode or a QR code, right? Recounting those ballots means nothing, because you cannot prove that the ballots themselves are legitimate. That's the difference between a recanvass and a recount. The Trump campaign has been demanding a recanvass because their challengers were kept out of the room while these mail-in ballots, especially in Philadelphia and Allegheny County of Pennsylvania, while those mail-in ballots were being canvassed, while they were being opened up, verified that the signatures exist, match, verify that the voters are real, the postmark, yada, 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 the secrecy sleeve. Trump campaign's in court saying we deserve to have been able to see that, and because they kept us out of the room, we deserve a recanvass. Now we are hearing that Pennsylvania has started destroying the envelopes. Now some people are saying that's not true, that's not true. Other people are saying, yes, they've started destroying the envelopes. I want to talk about what it means if it is true, because there's plenty of people blowing the whistle saying that envelopes are being destroyed. Plenty of people blowing the whistle. And I was going to include this. This was a tweet from, I believe, Eric Trump. Mr. Producer, go ahead, put up my screen. This is a tweet that Eric Trump put up yesterday. Oh, sorry, tweet unavailable. Anyone listen to the audio version? I just tried to go to the link that I had. Listen, we do a lot of show prep here. We plan the show. Yesterday, I found this tweet. I archived the link. Said, oh, this is going to be great to bring up on tomorrow's show. I go to get to it this morning, and this tweet is unavailable. Now, the good news is that I am onto this game that Twitter is playing, and I make sure that we archive everything, or at least most things, before I set it aside to be used in the show. We know, based on what big tech, Twitter, YouTube, what they're all doing, you cannot count your chickens until they've hatched. If you find something you think is important, and this goes to everyone, if you find something you think is important, whether it be a tweet, a public record, save it, archive it, share it, on whatever forum you can. Because we're already seeing this when it comes to state websites. Like when people started connecting the dots that dead voters in Michigan were voting, all of a sudden we saw the Michigan voter registry go down. Huh, interesting. So make sure you save everything. But I did actually archive this. Mr. Producer, go ahead and put up my screen again. This is the tweet that they deleted. It was actually a retweet from Eric Trump. The retweet was from a man named David Chapman. And it says, Philadelphia has destroyed all ballot envelopes. This will make identifying naked ballots and ballots arriving post-election impossible. It will also make finding fraud in an audit very hard. All true statements. Eric Trump retweeted that and said, we are looking into this as we speak, ... Something that Eric Trump said, because the original tweet's still up, but Eric Trump simply saying that we are looking into this apparently angered the Twitter gods so much that they deleted the post. Really big deal. I mean, if they are deleting these envelopes, which tons of people are now blowing the whistle, the envelopes are not being preserved, that is a big deal. And let me explain why. I don't like that I know what this law is. I don't like that I was able to find this law by memory, but this is 52 USC section 20701. And I'm able to tell you that without reading, staring right into the camera, because I am far too much of a nerd, and I know the random U.S. code listing for the requirement that ballots and all requisite records be preserved. And this is the important part of federal law. This is why it's so important. If Philadelphia is destroying these envelopes, what they are doing is criminal. This is 52 U.S.C. Section 20701, known as retention and preservation of records and papers by officers of elections. It says, quote, every officer of election shall retain and preserve for a period of 22 months from the date of any general, special, or primary election, of which candidates for the office of president, vice president, presidential elector, member of the Senate, member of the House of Representatives, or represent commissioner of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico are voted for. All records and papers which come into his possession relating to any application, registration, payment of poll tax, or other act requisite to voting in such election, except that, when required by law, such records and papers may be delivered to another office of election, and except that if a state or the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico designates a custodian to retain and preserve these records and papers at a specified place, then such records and papers may be deposited with such custodian. And the duty to retain and preserve any record or paper so deposited shall devolve upon such custodian. Any officer of election or custodian who willfully fails to comply with this section shall be fined not more than $1,000 or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. And that is a crime punishable not by the person necessarily, but by the destroyed record. So if Pennsylvania truly has destroyed all of their envelopes, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of crimes, each punishable by up to $1,000 fine or up to 1 year in prison. Now, let's put it up again. I want to make sure I really hammer this home. Federal law states that any document related to an election that is requisite for the vote, that includes ballots, that includes applications to register to vote, that includes applications to receive a mail-in ballot, right? All of these things. It includes the envelope. They must be preserved for a period of at least 22 months, and that is to allow in case an election is challenged or an audit is required. You can't destroy the records. You have to hold on to them. In this case, in Pennsylvania, a ballot envelope is requisite to the voting itself. A ballot cannot be counted unless that envelope includes a signature, includes a postmark, and the envelope, the ballot inside, was put into a secrecy sleeve. If any of those three things do not exist, and again, the postmark it's a little wishy-washy because they can do it by hand. If any of those three things do not exist, a ballot can be thrown out. So the fact that Philadelphia is now allegedly destroying these means that they have violated 52 U.S.C. Section 20701. Make sure I get it right. Section 20701. It's criminal. It's absolutely criminal. But it's not just that. It's not just that. It also brings into question a concept, and any lawyers on the channel, feel free to correct me. I am not a lawyer, but I like to play one on TV. I want to talk about this, and then we'll bring Joe on. Mr. Producer, put on my screen real quick. I want to get into this. Spoliation of evidence. This is Joe, you can bring Joe's video on top of it. Spoliation of evidence. That is the intentional, reckless, or negligent withholding, hiding, altering, fabricating, or destroying of evidence relevant to a legal proceeding. The Trump campaign is in court. They are demanding a recanvass, and the city of Philadelphia is now destroying the documents that would be important and crucial to that recanvass. So spoliation of evidence is the idea that if you are a defendant in a criminal case, or I guess technically the plaintiff, and there are documents relevant to that case, and there's a reasonable belief that those documents could be called into question in the case, and you destroy those documents, or you so negligently mishandle them that they get destroyed. Spoliation of evidence is the idea that if that happens, you do not have the presumption of innocence. If you destroy evidence, the court is allowed to presume you guilty, and is allowed to presume that you destroyed evidence to hide something. If the city of Philadelphia is destroying ballots while a court proceeding is taking place and the Trump campaign is trying to get access to those envelopes, sorry, not ballots, envelopes, to recanvass, and the city of Philadelphia is destroying them, that is spoliation of evidence that calls into question the entire election. And yes, it opens up an avenue for, according to Rudy Giuliani, up to 650,000 votes to be thrown out. Will it happen? I don't know. But the fact that they're destroying the envelopes is a big deal. Absolutely a big deal. Joe is in from his meeting. Sorry, Joe, we had to go live. Too much to talk about.
That's all right.
What do you think of this?
I'm just catching up to it, but I think it's going to be very difficult for the courts to actually say that there's not widespread fraud. But the issue that I have that's actually more telling right now is that the news media is ignoring these facts. It's ignoring what we're actually talking about. They're acting as if this doesn't exist, and that's not scary to me. That by itself just shows me that we have an establishment problem. We have a problem when you put people in different positions and authority, right? And if we want to go back to Project Veritas, actually put out a thing on Chris Jacks, where he talked about we have the majority inside of the Democrat Party, and the same thing could be said for now. This was a part of their strategy. They've articulated their strategy is to infiltrate different areas with people that are of like mind, so that they can actually have this conspiracy happen. And that is what's happening, Max. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
They're destroying things because they know that their house of cards is about to fall down. And I got to tell you, as Americans, we should be afraid of this. But at the same time, we should recognize the fact that this is the death blow. We do not give up. We do not retreat. We do not surrender. Period. End. I'm sorry. It's just the way it is.
Well, the important part about all this, because we can talk a little bit about Dominion later, but this is a huge deal. If they are destroying these envelopes, Joe, right before you came on, we discussed that this is a violation of 52 U.S.C. Section 20701, which mandates that all of these records be preserved for 22 months, at least, precisely for this reason, so that it can be audited if necessary. If these are being destroyed, if these allegations are correct, which lots of people are blowing the whistle now, these are big, big crimes. And I was talking to someone yesterday, and we were talking about what would this mean for the voter. And they're saying, well, listen, if you voted, your right to vote is sacrosanct. It should be counted, even if a ballot is mishandled. And the problem is that your right to vote is just as valuable as all of our rights to know that the votes are fairly and equitably counted, right? Your right to vote ends as soon as you put that ballot in the envelope, mail it, or drop it into a drop-off box. Because for all you know, you can truly feel in your heart of hearts that you did everything correct. If you make one mistake on your ballot, right, in a lot of states you can toss it out, right? There's no right to have your ballot counted if you do it incorrectly. What Philadelphia is now allegedly doing is destroying the envelope so that we cannot recanvass their canvas. So we cannot look to see whether A, their ballots are signed correctly, B, the envelopes are legitimate envelopes, right? C, if they arrived by mail, that they had a proper postmark, or D, that the secrecy sleeve was used, or I guess we can go to E, that the voter is registered, right? I mean, there's so much here. And by destroying the envelopes, they are taking away, not only, as we said, violating federal law, but taking away legitimate recourse from the Trump campaign to recanvass and to recount. Because unless you recanvass, if you recount bad ballots, all you get is a recounted number of bad ballots. So yes, it's unfortunate if you are in that batch that was mishandled. But yes, unfortunately, one of the means of recourse at the Trump campaign's disposal now is to have the entire batch tossed out. If you cannot present evidence to allow for a recanvass and a revote and a recount, then there is an argument to be made that those ballots should not be allowed to stand.
100%. 100%. And look, Max, it's even a bigger issue because it's happening in every state that Dominion is in. And I keep going back to Dominion because Dominion is something we need to focus on. Did you know, right? Did you know that Eric Coomer is being scrubbed from the internet being associated with Dominion? I mean, they're going on to things like Lead Candy. They're going on to LinkedIn. They're pulling down RFPs. I have a record of it. So part of our system is going through and just seeing what they're trying to take down. They're literally scrubbing Eric Coomer, Dr. Eric Coomer, the sociopath, by the way, the absolute scumbag that is.
We are not mental health professionals. We cannot provide a diagnosis on his mental health, but he is sociopathic.
Sociopathic. All right, that's perfect.
Say that he's sociopathic.
he is the thing that he is trying to, just like Antifa, the thing that they are trying to ascribe that they're not, right? This is typical loony leftism, right? But I got to tell you, and then why would you do that? Why would you scrub somebody from your deal if you're not hiding anything, right? Dominion just put something out that says Dominion categorically denies any claims about vote switching or alleged software issues with our voting systems. They're lying. They're lying. That's a lie, right? So I'm gonna tell you, as we start putting posts out and on tweets and things like that, I want you guys to all tag Dominion, right, with all the stuff that Eric has said and done.
We cannot recommend that you do that. That constitutes brigading, a term according to
it's
Facebook
public domain.
and YouTube's.
It's public
we
domain.
cannot encourage people to use their if they feel in their heart of hearts that it's a good idea for them to tweet at a user or to tweet or to comment on someone, they can do that. But we cannot encourage that because that constitutes brigading under Facebook and YouTube's terms of service. So we are absolutely not recommending that you do that. But if in your heart of hearts you feel compelled to do it individually, have at it. So the interesting part about all this is the ballot, the envelope destruction, and the allegations from Dominion fall under this same kind of umbrella. The idea that ballots were changed, or that ballots, you cannot prove that the ballots are legitimate, which would render a recount pointless, right? You cannot recount bad ballots. You have to ensure that bad ballots are taken out before a recount is done. Otherwise, as we've said multiple times over the course of this show, all you get is a more accurate count of bad ballots. So with this in Philadelphia, you have now allegedly destroyed envelopes, destroyed mail-in ballot envelopes. With Dominion, you have allegations that votes were changed, that votes were thrown out, right? So that even if you did a recount, you wouldn't find that because you'd be recounting bad information, bad votes.
Correct.
Which is why it's so important to do a recanvass, to actually do an audit into these electronic voting systems, because without that, there's absolutely no way to actually get to the truth. And again, if Joe Biden won legitimately, then he won legitimately. But folks, this is way too much smoke to simply say there's no fire. And Joe, I know you've seen this. The media keeps saying over and over and over again, there is no evidence of voter fraud. It's actually changed in recent days. Now they're saying there's no evidence of widespread voter fraud, since now we know that dead people did vote. Next, they're going to say that, oh, well, there was voter fraud, but it didn't affect the state. Then they're going to claim, oh, well, it didn't affect the Electoral College. Joe Biden still won. And after that, the last step in this process is them admitting that it was fraudulent. But we're now 2 steps of the way. They've gone from there is no voter fraud to now saying there is no widespread voter fraud. It's just, it really is stunning because no matter what Trump does, let me see if I can find it. There was a tweet that Trump put out honoring veterans on Veterans Day. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, did you also see that Facebook has reclassified Donald Trump not as president of the United States, but as a politician?
No.
Yeah, let me see if I can get that. Lots of things I got to pull up.
They do realize that you can't actually do that.
So let me see if I can share this without people seeing any of my name. Okay, go ahead, put up my screen. So this is Donald Trump. It used to say 45th president of the United States. It now says political candidate and politician. So they changed that. Let me see if I can find the one that Donald Trump put up for Veterans Day, because they added a warning to it. It was ridiculous. They added a warning to Donald Trump's Veterans Day post. Let me see if I can find it. I'll keep fine. Go ahead and take it off my screen. It's just incredible because they're saying that there's no fraud. And then when you find fraud, they're still saying there's no fraud. Twitter's still saying these allegations of fraud are disputed. And if you actually click the link, that's not what it says, right? If someone comes with a new allegation of fraud and Twitter adds a disclaimer saying this is being disputed, and they link to just a general statement that says there is no voter fraud, it's just ridiculous, right?
Correct.
Go ahead, you talk for a little bit. I'll see if I can find this post from Donald Trump about Veterans Day. What do you think the recourse is for all this, Joe? What do you think the American people can do? What do you think should be done?
I don't think Joe Biden can become president of the United States under any circumstances. I don't think that I think that we're in an unprecedented time where I think that the Supreme Court is going to have to rule on this, and I think they're going to rule that President Trump retains or has a second term. You know, it's like Secretary of State Pompeo said very clearly, we are looking forward to a smooth transition into a second Trump term.
Yes, the Office of Management and Budget has now asked for a budget to be prepared for a second Trump term. So they're moving full speed ahead as if Trump's reelected.
And they should be. And they should be.
If they were just being pissy about this and refusing to concede, they wouldn't be doing all that, right? And that's why I think this is such a big difference.
Yeah. Look, I think that if we don't get to the place where we can actually honestly have a conversation about our election, the election fraud, if we don't solve this election, we have lost our ability to maintain a republic. And from this point on, our country will fall off a very deep cliff, a very deep cliff.
So we do have a caller on the line. We have Dan on the line, and he says that if this was a sports game, if these were sports fans would never accept these outcomes, especially if they were bettors.
No.
Dan, can you hear us? How's it going?
Yes, sir. Pretty well. It just seems it's a difference of tolerance. As the voters would accept something which is patently illegal, and you know, your average soccer team, if there was a protest on a flag, they charge the field and try to kill the umpire.
Yeah, yeah. In some countries, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. You're absolutely right. Are you there?
Did we lose him? You're still there.
Did you get my Robert Heinlein comment the other day?
No, which one?
No.
The science fiction Robert Heinlein writer made an observation. He said that be wary of strong spirits. They can entice you to shoot at politicians and cause you to miss.
I love that.
That's a good line. I like that. So if this was a sporting event and there were billions of dollars on the line, let's say it's a Super Bowl, there's billions of dollars on the line.
Yep.
In betting, and it was obvious that there was fraud, I mean, people would be up in arms, right? If you were about to lose your shirt over a fraudulent result, if you know the game was fixed, or you know that the team was deliberately trying to cover the spread, right? All things that have happened in the past, right? All things that have happened in the past. I mean, the White Sox scandal, them betting for themselves. They weren't betting against themselves. They were betting for themselves. No, it's there's lots. You look at Pete Rose, look at all that. What would you expect to see from gamblers? I mean, gamblers, depending on where you bet, you could have your legs broken if you did this.
Well, the penalties in this case, there are no penalties. If it were treated like a sports infraction, they would never be allowed to play the game again.
But that's, I think, what we're getting to, right, Dan, is that the Dominion voting systems and other voting systems that are owned by Dianne Feinstein's husband and campaign manager and Harry Reid's family. I mean, I go down the line. I mean, it's massive what's happening in this deal. They're absolutely influencing and absolutely interfering with our election results. And frankly, it's treason, it's sedition, and depending on which level it rises to, it is subject to death.
Yeah. In time of war, but I mean, this is a war.
It is a war. You're right. It is a war.
Well, thank you so much for your call, Dan. Really do appreciate it. It's a great insight. Because listen, this is very similar. There are people who bet on elections too, and the idea that the election could be stolen. If you were using let's say an unofficial bookie, I mean, you could expect people's legs to be broken, if not worse. Trying to toss this. You're talking about the Dominion voting systems cover-up. Mr. Producer, go ahead and put up my screen. This is what it looks like in the back end of Wikipedia. And the Wikipedia entry for Dominion voting systems used to contain a section on controversy. In the 2020 presidential election, many local governments, such as Michigan, are investigating errors that accidentally gave votes to Democrats when they should have been for Republicans. They included a source, the FREEP, which is not a controversial source, right? That is what it used to look like. but it was just edited. And now it no longer exists in the source code on Wikipedia. This is why you don't use Wikipedia as a source, folks, because there are leftists working overtime to remove sources on Wikipedia to shape the narrative. This is not a free and open discussion. It is not the people's encyclopedia anymore. It is being propagandized to spread a specific narrative that's literally taking out well-sourced controversy.
So Max, I want to do something if I can really quick. I've been working on this. Actually, I've had people working on this all morning, and I think that it's interesting that you bring this up and the fact that they're whitewashing things. And guys, you hit the share button. This is actually really important. Max, I'm sending you this picture right now.
I can't get on Slack. I can't get on Slack, so send it to Josh. Send it to Josh.
All right, Josh, I'm sending it to you, and you can do it then. Daggone it. Hold on a second. Back up. Wait a minute. Doing what Max is asking me not to do.
Oh, wow. This is crazy. This is allegations coming forth. I'm just going to say something while you're doing this. It's a squirrel, but we won't stay on it. Allegations that Joe Biden was briefed on Pfizer's vaccine news before government sources were. Government officials.
Are you serious?
That's an allegation now coming out.
That is actually...
Biden campaign found out Sunday night, but everyone else found out Monday.
All right, hold on a second. I'm going to...
And that is straight from Alex Azar, Secretary of Health and Human Services, saying that there was a gap in communication, let's say.
A gap in communication? Look, I actually don't know. Sorry, I'm trying to do something else for you here really quickly. I have that image. You do? Hold on a second before you share that image. Let me get you the other one so that we have both. And you're going to need this other link. So I sent a link to you.
We got to get this going soon.
Okay, go ahead. All right. So if you'll just show the link, please. The picture first. So this, by the way, is how I discovered who Eric was, right? So why this is important is Eric, Dominion, Denver, Colorado. It didn't take me much based upon the phone call that I was on to actually figure out who he was. So at the top, you see it says Dominion, Secretary of State, right? It says Eric Coomer's Rocket Reach email, right? Up there, see it on Rocket Reach where it is, Dominion Voting Systems. Yeah, everyone can see it. Right below that, Eric Schuler, Eric Johnson. Then it gets right back into Dominion Voting Systems. And if you'll see in the underneath, it says view full profile Eric Coomer, right? And so as you went to that, that would actually bring up Eric Coomer as a part of Dominion Voting Systems.
We showed this on the show the other day.
No. Now give the link, put the link up. Can you actually do that? All right. So this is the Dominion Voting Systems employees. And if you'll look at it, go up. Go up, down. Sorry, down. Guess who's not there? They've cleaned him from the record.
Yeah.
Now, if you actually run, and if you go to the top and put in those same terms, right? If you go to the very top of this and put in Eric Coomer, Eric, Coomer, right? Denver, Colorado. Eric Coomer, Dominion, Denver, Colorado, and pull that up, and you look at what they did. They scrubbed everything from Rocket Reach. They scrubbed everything from Lead Candy. They took him off the website. They took him out of the they've taken him off everything, right? So just so you know, folks, what we're doing is working. They're getting that information. This information is actually getting across the finish line, right? And he's going to be held accountable for the things that he did. And you could say all you want that, it's not the smoking gun. Yes, it is. You can't have someone that is so full of vitriol and hate and saying F the USA, F the police, and putting this out there in his public domain, un-Trump me, right? And some of the other things that he said, which we've already shared, and say that this guy is impartial, that he's not actually interfering with our election. And by the way, everything else is supporting it. And now they're taking him down. This is the guy that actually reposted the Antifa manifesto. This is the guy, right? I just want to point that out.
Yeah. And now there are whistleblowers coming forward from Dominion.
Yeah.
Both ex-employees, contractors, IT contractors, now teaming up with the Trump campaign to say, no, there was funny business here. We're awaiting those affidavits. Let's talk a little bit about what an affidavit is, because we keep hearing the media, the mainstream media, including Fox, saying that there is no evidence of voter fraud. And it seems very strange. I was listening to a case in Michigan yesterday. They had it on YouTube, and they had the comment section open, so that was very fun to watch an actual hearing with a comment section. You don't usually see that. But the Democrat lawyers kept saying there was no evidence, there's no evidence. And I don't think he works for the Republican Party. I think he just works for concerned voters and a concerned organization. He stops them and says, listen, this is ridiculous. Affidavits are evidence. Affidavits are not hearsay. Hearsay would be, Joe, if I said, I heard from someone else that this happened. That's hearsay. But if I'm in the room and I say, I saw this happen, that's not hearsay.
Right.
Right? That is evidence. I am testifying under oath, under penalty of prosecution, penalty of perjury. So when you sign an affidavit, and if you lie on that affidavit, you go to jail for a long time.
Long time.
The Trump campaign
unless
now
you're
has
Hillary
over
Clinton.
500. Yeah, unless you're Hillary Clinton. The Trump campaign now has over 500 signed under oath affidavits alleging more than 11,000 election crimes, irregularities, or concerning fraud. Think about that. And that was yesterday's number. It's probably increased today. And the mainstream media says there's no evidence. No, that is over 500 people who are willing to walk into court, put their hand up, put their other hand on the Bible, and swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and say, I saw fraud. Fraud happened. If I'm lying, send me to jail.
100%.
Fraud happened. And the mainstream media says there's no evidence. That's what's so infuriating. Because before Donald Trump was even inaugurated, they were spreading the Russia fake news, not based on sworn affidavits, but based on leaks from the intelligence establishment, right? Anti-Trump intelligence officials leaking to the Washington Post that, oh, Michael Flynn's on a phone call with the Russians, right? They're willing to run with that. But now that there are signed and sworn affidavits, they're saying, oh, there's no evidence. No evidence. No evidence at all. It's just incredible. And the reason that they're affidavits, Joe, is because in the time of COVID, they can't drag all these people into a courtroom, right? They're not allowed to drag 500 people into a courtroom. It would violate social distancing. So they use affidavits. Also, it's easier. People don't have to leave their house, their home state, their home counties, whatever. It's just been remarkable to me to see that even when there are people swearing under penalty of prosecution that, yes, I witnessed fraud, it's just being tossed out as not real. I don't know. I would love to see another case where that is the standard, because I can't find one.
Well, here's the thing that we have to settle down on, right? Is that we have to remain calm. Number one, like I get angry and I get a little upset about this, but we have to actually keep our heads about us, because they're not, right? And they're actually attacking attorneys for President Trump right now. They're attacking those attorneys. They're actually doxing and attacking those attorneys. If this was a fair and balanced election, if this election was not interfered with in large scale, then why? Tell me this, Max. Tell me why we would be dealing with right now. We would be dealing with as much resistance to just actually counting the ballots. Why is it that when you go back to some of the tweets and things that Coomer's done? By the way, Coomer actually took down his Reddit handles, Twitter handles. He's taking down everything, right?
Well, I hope that you got all of it screenshotted.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did.
No, he should want a recount. That's what these people should want, because it would show how accurate their voting systems are. Also, by the way, Mr. Producer put up my screen just to basically follow up on something we covered yesterday. Yes, Ray Chornenke, the Maricopa County GOP chair, has resigned after it was revealed that she never bothered to show up for the election equipment verification test. And yes, Maricopa County is the only county in the state that uses Dominion voting systems. She didn't show up to actually test that they were working as described, and she has now resigned in shame.
Good.
Yep.
Good. I mean, listen, guys,
no sympathy.
we're not even done yet. We're not done yet. We're not done. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you allow Biden to become president, because somehow you think, and this was said to me yesterday, that somehow you think, well, it's a pacifier, Joe. We have to give him a pacifier. This will keep the left quiet, keep him from rioting. So what? You want to lose your country because you're afraid that they're going to try and do something? You're going to lose your country? You're willing to give up your country? You're willing to let them commit fraud at an election? You're willing to let those things happen so you can feed them a pacifier? I want you to know how just insane that is. Well, I'm afraid. No, courage is not the absence of fear. It's despite fear doing something anyway. We can't give up our country, Max. We can't give up our country. If you're listening, we can't give up our country. We can't allow them to manipulate and take away the American voice, or we've already become a communist nation. We can't allow him to literally say on day one, we're going to walk into the White House and we're going to undo everything he did overseas. That's America last, not America first. I mean, we should be first. It's our nation. They say, put your mask on before helping or assisting others. We have never put the mask on. We keep assisting others, and we're dying as a nation. We are dying, folks. We're dying. We're dying.
You want to know what's absolutely infuriating? One of those things that he plans to get rid of is the Trump campaign's agreement with Central American countries that if people want to come here for asylum, they have to stay there, wait there, and apply there. And anyone who gets arrested here illegally entering the country and fraudulently claiming asylum could be swiftly sent back. Joe Biden plans to get rid of that. In addition to that, any illegal alien adult in the United States would be eligible to have their children from overseas, not overseas, other countries, flown in so that they don't have to be trafficked using coyotes. Joe Biden is literally talking about giving illegal aliens plane tickets to the United States to reunite them with other illegal alien family members. This is how insane this is. Mr. Producer, I did just send you a link to a Twitter video. If you could put that up, let me know when it's ready. Okay, let me set this up. This is Mayor de Blasio's daughter, apparently high on something, declaring that they have just elected the first female Black Asian woman president. She's saying the quiet part out loud that Kamala Harris would really be president, and then congratulating Joe Biden for stealing the election. I kid you not, this is Bill de Blasio's daughter. And as you watch this, pay attention to the woman in the hat overhearing what she just said, the quiet part out loud, the Freudian slip, the thing that she's not supposed to admit. Watch the face of the bystander looking over like, what are you talking about? Let's go ahead and play this video, Mr. Producer.
Why do you think this is so special? Why do you guys have this special?
Well, for me, it's really special because now we have the first Black Asian female president in office, elected, and Joe Biden was able to steal now, because it's a win. Sorry.
I don't understand here.
No, we were able to win the election. Yes.
That's kind of. Notice that woman behind her? Let's play again with that volume up high. She says that they've just elected a female president, saying the quiet part out loud, and then saying that Joe Biden has been able to steal the election. Let's play it one more time, and then we'll get your reaction to it, Joe.
Why do you think this is so special? Why do you guys have this special?
Well, for me, it's really special because now we have the first Black Asian female president in office, elected, and Joe Biden was able to steal now, because it's a win. Sorry.
I don't understand here.
No, we were able to win the election.
What's interesting about this is she would have been in the room. If a steal was talked about with Bill de Blasio,
she would have been in the room.
She would have been in that. She would have at least been in that house, right? I mean, she just misspoke. Did she? I mean, that's. I hate the conspiratorial mindset of this. But when you have the daughter of the mayor of New York City coming out and saying that we just elected a female president and that Joe Biden stole the election, at some point, we just got to believe them for what they're saying. Joe Biden said that he's created the best voter fraud organization in history. At some point, just believe what they're telling us. Believe the affidavits. Believe the Freudian slips. Believe the confessions from Joe Biden's mouth. At some point, just believe it. Stop peddling, and I'm talking to media, stop peddling these falsehoods that there's no evidence.
It's not hard to believe.
All you do is believe it. It's not.
It's not hard to believe. It's not. It's not hard to believe because it's true. Look, the Benford model is used for some. The Benford law is actually used productively in our society by all sorts of government agencies. It's used. ARIMA analysis, right, which is the ARIMA is basically the ability to do financial modeling, has been used in this country for the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 decades. It's impossible to have this many things happen all at once. It's impossible. Folks, look, you don't understand, or maybe you do understand. Maybe I'm just talking to an echo chamber, but it's important that you talk about these things. It's important that we talk about Dominion. It's important that we talk about the fact that they've thrown away these envelopes. Like, these are the smoking guns. This is the thing that deteriorates an ability for a country to have free and fair elections, is by inputting technology that strips us away from having an American voice. That's what they're doing right now, and you're letting it happen. And I got to tell you, all because some people have said, let's just give them a pacifier. Let's let them have the next 4 years. We can get it back in 4 years. No, you're not. It's going to get worse. It's going to get a ton worse. President Trump will get another 4-year term, right? And by the way, you have people like AOC and others that are coming out and basically saying, now we're going to declare war on people that actually supported Trump. Bring it. Bring it. Bring it. Bring it.
Mr. Producer, go ahead and put up my screen. Joe mentioned Benford's law again. This is Milwaukee. Benford's law is the idea that when you look at large data sets, it is predictable that the first digit of every entry of data will follow a certain pattern. Number 1 will be 30% of the time, and then it'll go down a logarithmic curve. This is from Milwaukee. You can see that Donald Trump, Don Blankenship, Joe Jorgensen, Brian Carroll, Amar Patel, and then write-in follows the model. Right. Write-in follows the curve. Joe Biden's doesn't.
No.
There are far too many precinct counts, far too few precinct counts that start with the number 1, and far too many that start with 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Right.
It's just, and that doesn't prove fraud. It just means that you deserve to take another look at it. Something's not right. Maybe it's explainable. Maybe all of the precincts just happen to have gone 100% for Joe Biden. They all happen to have a total of 500 voters, right? If 500 voters all vote for Joe Biden, then it's explainable that 5 would be overrepresented. But you have to do that deeper dive. And what's happening is, as people do the deeper dive, we're finding more fraud, and they're saying, oh, the fraud doesn't exist.
So let me explain to you how hearsay works and how works. So we have someone that's asking if we have proof of the Eric call. So, fruit of the poison tree. So, I've spelled out a line.
Not really the term that would apply, but go ahead.
What? It is.
Fruit of the poison tree would be if police illegally kicked down your door and then found drugs in your house.
Or if I did something illegal in order to gain that information, which I didn't do, right? So, I want to be...
Sure.
So
if you recorded a call and you needed his consent, fine, yeah.
And frankly, yes, I have proof, but and by the way, I've already provided that. So time's not running out because I've already made sure that I've seeded the information that I have. But one of the other people said that, hey, this is hearsay. It's not, because I heard it. Now, what I've also said on this call is that I correlated that information, and I just showed you how I correlated it, right? But the reality of it is there's plenty of proof, right? I mean, there's plenty of proof, and this isn't, like I'm drawing a line from two lines together, right?
As we mentioned, it's not hearsay for you to tell what you heard.
Right.
It would be hearsay if someone else on the call told you what happened and then you relayed that.
Okay, so yeah,
eyewitness or ear witness accounts are not hearsay; they are evidence.
So, but let me tell you something else about getting access to and listening to this stuff. It'd be one thing if I had that information, I went and researched them, which I did, and I put that information aside, which I did, right? Because I couldn't believe that a guy like this would do something like that, because he has a PhD in nuclear physics. It wasn't until I started reaching into more of what he wrote, right, that someone that he really likes, Dr. Leary. Dr. Leary is a guy that loves psychedelic drugs. He was a professor at Cal Berkeley, but where he went and listened to it, and he actually said that. It wasn't until I started putting 2 and 2 together, when I got access to his Facebook page and some of the other handles that he has on Twitter and things like that, that I started to realize that he reposted Antifa's. So it's not like I went over here and said, oh, this guy, Eric, he's terrible, right? That's not what happened. I didn't even know he existed.
Because we have breaking news right now. Mr. Producer, go ahead and put up my screen. The Trump campaign has won a case in Pennsylvania, which would require all late arriving ballots to be thrown out.
Yes.
A Pennsylvania judge. Here's the problem. It's good news, but It's bad news in that late arriving ballots have already allegedly been mingled in with other ballots. So when you get rid of the envelopes of all of the allegedly legal ballots, there is no way of telling whether truly all the late arriving ballots are segregated. The way you
that
do
means
that
you have
is
to do a
go
revote.
back,
You got to revote.
yeah, or you have to put enough doubt into the legislature to convince that Republican-led legislature to certify a different slate of candidates.
Right.
Or you get a judge to toss out the whole thing. Yeah. But that, I didn't want to cut you off, but this is breaking news happening right now.
Listen,
important to
as soon as by the way this happens, right? In the voter ID deadline, all this stuff happens. As soon as this stuff happens, right? And we take away Pennsylvania, right? And we take away Georgia, and we take away, I guess, one other. I don't think you need one other. I think that's it, right?
Well, Arizona is now within 10,000 votes.
Yeah.
And interesting statistic in Arizona is there are, I believe, 14,000 people who have registered to vote without being able to prove their citizenship. It is a weird quasi-legal status that's only in Arizona because Arizona had a state law that required you to prove your citizenship to register to vote. The Supreme Court said you're not allowed to do that, so Arizona's kind of workaround was that they set up two separate voter registration systems. In order to register to vote for state and local elections, you must be able to prove your citizenship, but you can register to vote for federal elections without proving your citizenship. So there are 14,000 people who have registered to vote in federal elections in Arizona being unable or unwilling to provide evidence that they are U.S. citizens. So there's lots of ways here, right? There's lots of avenues to challenge ballots, but you have to be able to recanvass. You have to be able to hold in your hand all of the materials that came with the ballot, including the envelope, to prove that it actually was submitted at the right time before the election ended, the right way. When you get rid of all that evidence, you run the risk of, even if you had a recount, you just have a recount of bad ballots. And then is there a revote? That's hard logistically.
Hard
November 12th.
if you commit fraud. If you commit fraud, you got to do it,
and
you got to
a month and 2 days away from the Electoral College voting. That is a long time to set up a new election because most state laws have on the book statutes that require accommodations. So like if you are registered to receive mail-in ballots because you are legitimately disabled, right? You can't just pull a snap election out of thin air because you'll never be able to get those ballots to them. So there's lots of logistical problems and there shouldn't be, right? If there's fraud, you redo it. That should be easy. But we're up against a hard deadline. The logistical issues, I just don't know if it's possible. And then you'd have to convince a legislature, a governor, or a federal court to go along with it. It's a hard road. I think the much easier path is to put so much doubt in the minds of Republican-controlled legislatures that they just refuse to certify those results, and they certify a different slate of candidates. I think that is the best way to go about this, or to get a judge just to throw it all out.
Well, and I think that we're going to head down that path because the Supreme Court's going to have to get involved in this. There's just too many cases. I mean, we're talking about, there's not enough to say that there's mass amounts of it. I literally did a search just of tweets and emails of different videos, and there's over 7,000 different videos of people out there that have actually cheated, right? That they're actually talking about. Now, let's say that 50% of those are wrong, are right, and that's 3,000. 3,000, let's say they affect 1,000 candidates. We're talking about hundreds of thousands, millions of votes that have actually been swayed or stolen in order to actually help Joe Biden, right?
And you look at what Fox did with Arizona. Even if Joe Biden managed to squeak through with Arizona, Fox had absolutely no business calling Arizona for Joe Biden, even if Joe Biden eventually wins by less than 10,000 votes. Fox had no business calling it.
No.
And then even as Donald Trump started coming back, they refused to uncall it out of sheer pride, right? As sheer hubris, they refused to go back on their call, hedging that they'd be right in the end. Even if Joe Biden wins by less than 10,000 votes, and there are still votes left to count, even if he wins by less than 10,000 votes, that does not justify what Fox did. Fox got lucky, right? Because if that's the end count, Fox got very, very lucky. No, we're seeing a mass exodus from Fox News. I haven't watched Fox News. When I find my wife watching it, I force her to turn it off. I'll watch clips, as I said, on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, but I have no business giving any ratings to their Nielsen ratings. I don't want to give any eyeballs to their Nielsen ratings. They don't deserve it. People think that Fox News stabbed us in the back. No, they set us up. right? Fox News absolutely set us up. They had no intention of actually staying with conservatives. They are preparing for a post-Trump world, and they are more than happy to have none of us in it. Fox News is now below CNN and MSNBC in the rankings. It's incredible.
And it happened very fast, right? People are like, oh, nope. And by the way, people are preparing for making sure that Biden does not become president. People are preparing. 70 million people in this U.S. are preparing. I bet you 40 million of them, the veterans, by the way, because of what they did in Philadelphia, those 2 veterans, that said that the reciprocity between the 2 states was actually removed recently. Nobody knew about it, where they basically targeted these 2 veterans. I don't know if you heard about this story. Yeah. Veterans are actually preparing, saying, do you really want a war with veterans? You want a war with people that actually have defended our country, right? From domestic and foreign terrorists, right? Threats to our society. Mm-hmm. So I have a couple things I want to put up here. Josh, I put a thing over to you. If you can pull it up.
Make sure there's no expletives. We're 4 minutes away from the end of the show.
No, it's no expletives.
we almost made it.
Arizona Secretary of State in charge of certifying election results called Trump voters neo-Nazis in 2017, right? And I'll read the thing to you. It says, "At real Donald Trump has made it abundantly clear he's more interested in pandering to his neo-Nazi base than being at POTUS for all Americans." Right. This is the person, by the way, responsible for certifying in Arizona. Right. Let me tell you what I said before.
And who's saying there's no evidence of fraud.
No, and she's saying there's no evidence of fraud. Right. These are the neo-Nazis, by the way. These are the Nazis. These are the communists. These are the socialists. These are the terrible human beings that want to infect and destroy our country. And you can say whatever you want. You can say, Joe, come on. They're not all bad. Yes, they are. They're all bad. If you allow for an election for someone to put their fingers on the election and actually change the outcome, they're really bad people. They're really bad people. And by the way, we will live with those results if we allow those people to get away with it, which I don't think is going to happen. I think that, again, we're going to...
Go ahead, finish your thought.
I think we're going to walk down a path that I think is very, very good. It's good for America. And I think that I do believe that they're preparing for a second Donald Trump term. I put another picture up if you can share that picture, the one I had before. So this is President Trump tweeted this morning.
And there are quotes.
It is a quote. It's a quote from someone else, right? Quote, report, Dominion deleted 2.7 million Trump votes nationwide. Data analysis finds 221,000 Pennsylvania votes switched from President Trump to Biden. 941,000 Trump votes deleted. States using Dominion voting systems switched 435,000 votes from Trump to Biden. End quote. At Chanel Ryan and
Channel Ryan OAN.
Channel Ryan, and at
she's the
OA.
She's the OAN. She's the OAN White House correspondent. Now, a couple times, Joe Otto has said that these people are Nazis and they're communists, and to some people, you might think that is impossible because the way that the left and the media often likes to present political ideologies is as a line with far right extremism, Nazis, fascism, being on one end, and far left extremism, socialism, communism being on the other. And the media loves to say that you cannot be, the communists are nothing like fascists. Well, that's not true. The Nazi Party, Nazi is an acronym, and I don't speak German, so I'm not going to try and pronounce it, but it was the National Socialist German Workers' Party. National Socialist. That's what the NAZ, right? That's what the Nats in Nazi stands for, right? National Socialist German Workers' Party. So it's not really a line, folks. Political ideology is not really a line. I like to describe it as a horseshoe. You think of a horseshoe upside down. It's not a perfect U. The ends of the horseshoe actually start dipping closer together as you get to the end. So political ideology really is like a horseshoe. Yes, there are parts that are diametrically opposed, but as you get farther to the spectrum, fascism and communism get closer together than legitimate conservatism and liberalism would be. It is an upside down, or a right side up, however you want to view it, horseshoe. So I just want to make sure preemptively, some people might think it's weird, but no, you can be socialist and you can be fascist. You do not have to be on opposite ends of the political spectrum. So Joe, any last words as we wrap this up, because we're getting close?
Yeah, so I have to tell you, I'm having some really interesting conversations with people while I'm actually doing this. Obviously, Max knows this about me. I do a lot of research, and he gets stuff in, and I get stuff in. I do appreciate everyone that listens to us. I also appreciate the fact that you support, what we're doing, right? And it shows. I mean, we're, even with Facebook throttling us and the things that they're doing to try and quell this voice, you'll notice that when we broke Dominion voting systems and we started breaking this information, and I started disseminating this information to lots of different people, it now is at the forefront. And now people from Dominion voting systems are actually coming forward saying, yes, there is some misdeeds from the people that actually run this organization. So I want to be really clear. I didn't know any of that. Right? I didn't talk to a whistleblower before I started blowing the whistle on the things that we actually knew. I didn't know who Eric Coomer was. I didn't even know that he was actually affiliated with anything. I thought it was funny, the fact that he thought he could actually do something to affect the election. It's all serendipitous, and it's because these people in Antifa like to run their mouth. They're boisterous because they think that the world thinks the way they do because they operate in an echo chamber, right? I'm shocked that a guy with a PhD in nuclear physics is actually out there saying that he would support Antifa, that he actually posts it, and he posts stuff like dead president and F the police and all the other things that he posts. I'm disgusted that this man is involved in the election process. I'm even more disgusted to figure out the people that work for Dominion are now scrubbing the internet of Eric's name. They're doing that right now, right? That should concern you. That can concern you. And the reason why, by the way, that we're keeping track of all that data and we're actually making sure that we can see that those things happen is because those are the things that guilty people do. They hide, right? They hide information, and they hide Reddit handles, and they hide stuff, and they clean information. Now that we know the information's out there, now that we know that Dominion is responsible for cheating, and in part, people in positions within these polls are responsible for cheating, we can absolutely demand that the American people's voice be heard. And that's really all we care about. Look, we've come against Republicans many times, Max. Many times we come against Republicans. And this isn't about Republican or Democrat. This is about being an American. This is about the fundamentals of this country and this Constitution. And when they're running out there saying Nazis and, fascists and all this other stuff, I don't know of a fascist bone in my body or a Nazi bone in my body. Again, my dad's black, my mom's white, my whole family's interracial.
Yeah.
I've spent my life actually giving to people and doing things to risk myself to help others in positions of poverty or disadvantage. So I got to tell you, it's great to actually have a platform to be able to do this. We're going to continue to push on this. And then we'll get back to once President Trump, after President Trump is reelected and put back in his rightful place for a second term, we're going to have to talk about, how we hold people like Antifa and the system responsible for letting it get this bad, letting people like this leak into our democratic republic. That's all I got, Max.
Well, I want to close up some loose ends. Mr. Producer, put on my screen. Anyone confused about what I was talking about, that's a horseshoe. The ends of the horseshoe actually dip a little bit closer than they would be if it was a straight wall of a U shape. Other thing to note, ICE's Twitter account just got blocked, shut down. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has lost its Twitter account, I guess for violating Twitter's terms of service. So the organization in charge of defending our borders apparently has been kicked off Twitter for talking about defending our borders. That is a big news item. We didn't get time to talk about this. Rudy Giuliani claims that, as we mentioned, a Dominion whistleblower has come forward and claims that in Michigan, 100,000 ballots for Biden were brought in the back door so they could, quote, catch up with Trump. He goes on to say that in an affidavit that is corroborated by 3 other people issuing sworn declarations under oath, under penalty of perjury. And just to make sure everyone knows, when you sign an affidavit and you submit that into federal court, if you lie, that brings in this federal law, 18 U.S.C. Section 1621, perjury generally. If you take an oath, whether it be written or verbal, and it's proven to be a lie, that is punishable by up to 5 years in prison. So these are felonies. If these
serious
allegations,
serious, and you lose your right to vote, by the way, if you're convicted of a felony for a certain period of time. So it's a big deal. It's a huge deal.
You gotta at least grant these affidavits the coverage that they deserve, because you can't just say that they're lying, because if they are, they're going to jail for a long time. So that's going to be it for this edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. If you like the podcast, please do make sure you subscribe. a download, and leave us a good review on Apple Podcasts. Very important. We are still number 62 in the country. Other podcasts are going up and down. We are holding strong at number 62 on the Apple Podcast rankings. All thanks to you. Please, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a good review. Help us go up in the rankings. We're also available on Google Play Store if you have an Android phone. We're on Spotify. Lots of people listen to us on Spotify nowadays. We're on Pandora, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and Podbean. So check us out all there if you want to listen to the audio podcast. Listen as you go about your day, as you work out, or whatever. We're also make sure we go live Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern on Facebook and YouTube. Make sure you like and follow our Facebook page. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell for notifications on YouTube as well. Text FREEDOM to 89517 and you will get an alert, a text alert when we go live with our show. Facebook and YouTube can't be trusted to send those alerts out. Half the time they don't. So if you text FREEDOM to 89517, you will get an alert when we go live. You can also join our email newsletter, link in the description. We're on Parler. Follow us at Conservative Daily. We'll be happy to follow you back. And there is a link if you want to help support the channel by buying some merch. Well, that's going to be it for this edition of the podcast. Yes.
Sorry. To 89517. Freedom.
Was that meant to be a Braveheart impression? Because it sounded like Rocky screaming Adrian.
Adrian! Hey, listen, this is why I do what I do and I don't do that, right? So, hey, cut me a little slack, Max. I'm kind of feeling a little hurt here.
Well, listen, you use a Scottish accent when you want to be Canadian, and you use a Philadelphia boxer when you want to be Scottish. So we got to get you to accent camp. Let's get you to an acting camp. That's going to be it for this edition of the podcast. Again, my name is Max McGuire.
And this is Joe Otto.
Remember that the fight to take back our country isn't over yet. Not by a long shot, but the only way we win is if we all stand and fight together.